Hello, welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks from Magic the Gathering's history. This is part 4 of looking at the Stronghold pre-constructed decks. So we're looking at the last one, which is the Spikes, which is a red-green deck which focuses all on this rather obscure creature type known as Spikes, not the spikes we normally associate with Magic, like the Johnny, Timmy, Spike trifecta. No, this is these are weird slug things. They're not great. We'll look at them. So we have the deck list here. We have 25 creatures, 6 sorceries, 6 instants, 21 land, 2 artifacts. We got the mana curve off to the side there. 21 lands is, I think, the lowest we've seen so far. That's very low, I think. I really do think it should be 24. There's definitely cards that could be cut to bump it up to 24. Because yeah, you're not running a lot of 1-drops really. But we'll get into it. We'll have a look at it, and I don't know, maybe 21 lands would have been enough for this deck, as it actually turns out. So let's start by looking at the spikes. Oh god, the art on Spike Drone is so gross. I can't deal of how gross it looks. So the spikes. Let's talk about the spikes. So these are like the weird like cousins of the slivers. So like in Tempest Block you had slivers introduced for the first time, and you had spikes. And guess which were more popular? It was the slivers, because the spikes are kind of gross and weird, but they all do have a defining ability, which is they come in with +1/+1 counters on them. You can pay mana and you can move their +1/+1 counters to other creatures, which is it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like a weird like prototype version of Graft, like from Simic and original Ravnica. So yeah, there's quite a few spikes in this deck. You would hope it's named after them. So you have Spike Drone, which is a 1/1. Spike Worker, which is it's not a 1/1. It's a 0/0 with a 1/1 counter. Spike Worker, which has 2 counters, and then Spike Colony, which has 4 counters. And they all have the ability to remove a counter from them, put a counter on another creature. So these are like the basic spikes. But then there are some spicier spikes who have better abilities. Oh god, the art on Spike Breeder. I think this is maybe why people didn't like spikes, because they look gross as hell. Ugh. So Spike Breeder is one of the rares of the deck. So it has the spike ability where it can move its counters around, but it can also remove one of its counters to create a spiked token. Which is weird, because the spike token, despite being a spike, has its own power token. It's not like it comes in as a 0/0 and has a +1/+1 counter. I mean, that's I mean, it makes things simpler, but like it would be cool if it was like it was a 0/0 token and it had a +1/+1 counter, and the token had the ability to move its. But then that's like a lot of rules text. So, but anyway, it can poop out tokens. That's all we care about. Spike Soldier. It has 3 counters, but it has its ability where it can remove its own counters to give itself +2/+2 until end turn. So like turn those counters into like a bigger temporary boost. And then Spike Feeder, who can remove counters to give you life, which is fine. So quite a lot of spikes. But then we also have like a weird number of like just random green creatures. This really feels like they needed to fill up space, and they were like, oh, there's not enough spikes. Quickly, let's just throw a random selection of green creatures in. So we have Bayou Dragonfly, which is a 1/1 flying swamp walk, fine. Lowland Basilisk, which is a 1/3 when it basically Death Touch. Oh, it's not Death Touch, it's worse than Death Touch. Destroy that creature at end of combat, so even first strike doesn't make it better. Canopy Spiders is 1/3 reach. Pinch Beetles is 3/1 shroud. Tempting Licid, or Liquid? Anyway, Licid, I've always said. So it's weird, we've got to this point, we've not had any deck with Licids in them. So Licids, I get to talk about Licids, it's really fun. Oh, man, Tempest Block had some really weird creatures. So it had Slivers, which is fine. Slivers have gone on and become their own thing. But it had Spikes, and it had Licids. And they're just weird. So lizards are creatures that you can spend mana, tap them, and then they become an aura attached to a creature, and it gives them an ability. Um, it's really interesting actually because in Neon Dynasties for Kamigawa, one of the most recent sets, is this ability exists as reconfigure. So I kind of wonder if, like in I don't know, like a Commander deck or a Modern Horizons decks, we would see, or Commander Legends or something like a draft set, like a nostalgia set, we would see a new Licid that is worded to have reconfigure. That'd be interesting. But yeah, so this one is a lure effect, so yeah, you can just whack it on a creature and everything blocks that and everything swings by, and then the Licid just drops off, and yeah. But yeah, lizards are kind of cool. I like them. I kind of actually, where's the Licid in this art? Because the Licid is not the guy who's yelling. The Licid is like a weird little like face hugger thing that's on his chest. Yeah, they're so weird. A lot of weird creature types in Tempest Block. Anyway, this is just a random section of green creatures. They're not spikes. We don't care about them. Then we have a few more green creatures. So Hermit Druid. As one of the rares. Now, I am not a expert in really like a lot of the formats of Magic. I kind of like just like sealed, or draft, or kind of like this, kind of playing precons out of the box like that. That's kind of what I like as most of Magic. But from what I understand, Hermit Druid is quite good in like vintage decks because it's from what I understand, it helps with dredge decks, I think, where he just like you can like mill your whole library because if you make your deck that you have no basic lands, he mills your entire deck, and that's good for some decks. I don't know. I don't really understand like high level vintage play, but yeah, I know this is quite a valuable card. Not entirely sure what it's doing in this deck, honestly, but it's fine. Just a random rare they decided to throw in, I guess. Sky Shroud Elf. So this guy showed up in the Swarm Precon in Tempest that we looked at. This is just like just a little mana guy. Taps to add green, and you can pay 1 to filter it into white or red mana, which I think that's all right. There's no limits on the filter ability. Doesn't have to tap to it, so yeah, I think it's a pretty good outlet for it. Rampant Growth, classic Rampant Growth, just search for a basic into play. I love Rampant Growth. And then 2 Heartstones, which I feel like is the cornerstone of a lot of combos over the years, where it reduces the cost of ability activations by 1 to a minimum of 1. So, like, obviously, combos are really nicey with all the spikes in here because all their ability to move their counters around costs 2. So with a Heartstone out, it only costs 1. Yeah, I think that's a nice inclusion, nice bit of synergy. A few more green spells. So alvinwright, to put more counters on things, gives more stuff for your spikes to do. Would have liked to see a few more alvinwrights. I think even just like 1 extra would have been nice to play up to the counter theme. Tranquility destroying enchantments, that's fine. Verdant Touch turns a land into a 2/2 creature permanently. Doesn't have to be one of your lands. Interesting. You can turn opponents' lands into creatures if you wanted to, kill them with burn spells or whatever. It's got buyback, so you could potentially do it over and over again. Of course, what else you can do with this? You can turn one of your lands into a creature, and then you could buff it up with all your spikes. You could put a load of counters on it and just have a big land creature. Again, not entirely sure it's the best choice for a rare in this deck, but it's okay being here. It's not doing any harm. Doesn't have like anti-synergy, I suppose. And then we have a few burn spells. So we have a playset of Kindle. I think we talked about Kindle before. I think it showed up in Flames of Wrath. Just a fun burn spell where it starts off kind of worse as shock, and it gets stronger and stronger the more Kindles that are all in all graveyards, rather than just your graveyard. So if there's a Kindle mirror match, you could potentially win it. 2 shocks, just shock, and then Fanning Flames, which is just X damage spell with buyback. So what could have been? So overall, I think this deck is okay. You've got like this random selection of green creatures, like the Dragonfly and the Basilisk, which you could take out. So there's definitely, I think, room for refinement on this. So Fling, I think, would work quite well in this, the deck where you can power up a creature with loads of +1/+1 counters, and then you fling it for lethal. Mob Justice does 1 damage to a player for every creature you control. There was 25 creatures in this. There's quite a lot of creatures, so Mob Justice I think would be fun. I used to really like Mob Justice. I used to use it in like Goblin decks and stuff. Spitting Hydra just synergizes well with +1/+1 counters. You could use the spikes to give it more counters, and then it can remove those counters to kill off enemy creatures. And Primal Rage just gives all your stuff trample, which is just a fine thing to do. Again, when you've got a load of creatures with +1/+1 counters, and you're shifting them around, giving them trample just makes them a little bit better. So in summary, I think it's a pretty okay deck. The spikes. It's very straightforward. Red green pre-constructed decks usually are, and as we'll come to see, they are usually very straightforward because it's usually just play creatures, turn them sideways, attack for lethal. That's fine. That's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be more than that. But you got like a kind of interesting extra strategy here with moving the counters around. I think that's kind of fun. But yeah, overall, I think the spikes is just okay. It's just a shame that the spikes themselves are just so gross to look at. There's weird spider slug things. They're just gross. I don't like them. But what do you think? Do you like the spikes? Did you have this deck? Did you love these weird little spiky slug things? Stick a comment below. I'd really like to know. And I'll be back next time. I'm going to be now starting on the pre-constructed decks for Exodus, which is the last of the Tempest block, or as I've just seen on the box here, the Wrath Cycle. But yeah, thanks for listening and have a good day.